Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Torah Studies. It's great to be here with you tonight. All right, so we are going to explore the Torah portion of Eikev. Eikev is it's one of my top favorite Torah portions. I would rank it probably within the top 53. That's a joke. There are 53 Torah portions. So it doesn't get any better, Jay. It only gets worse. So here we go. I love this Torah portion. It is great. We're in the book of Deuteronomy, and we've got Moses' final messages to the people. And so you know that whenever you turn the pages in Devarim and Deuteronomy, you're going to get either a recollection, like a story. Remember what happened? Remember when things went good or when things didn't go so well? Or, don't forget when you go into the land, you're going to encounter this challenge or that challenge. We get the... I always say this whenever I teach Devarim, this book of the Torah. Imagine a parent who knows that their time is, the clock is ticking. They're going to pass away at some point soon. Again, this was in 37 days of his passing. He knows the clock is ticking. He knows he will not be there with his people as they journey on to the next, to the next stage of the mission into the land of Israel and encountering challenges in other nations, and both, challenges from without and also from within, and dealing with the challenge of prosperity and blessing, because that, there's two challenges, famously. There's the challenge of not having, and there's the challenge of having. But the challenge of not having is, will you stay faithful even though you don't have? Will you pray? Will you believe that God will take care of you? The challenge of having is the challenge of remembering when you do have where it came from. They're both challenges. And in this book, Moses talks about both of them. The challenge when things are going tough, when things are tough, and the challenge of when things are going well. Moses says repeatedly, don't forget. You're going to say things are going to go well, and you're going to say, look, what's the phrase in Hebrew? Kochi va'otzim yadi asali asachal. He says, Kochi va'otzim yadi, my strength, right, and the power of my hands. That is what has created all of the success. Don't forget, it's God who gives you the power, the ability to be successful. So again, these are great themes that we encounter in the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy. And as we kind of hone in, as we always do, on one theme, we are going to focus on a specific area tonight. And the theme we're going to focus on is the notion of bribery. Now, in the context of Moshe telling the people to stay on the straight and narrow and remember how important it is to remain faithful to God, etc., Moses talks about bribery. Now, before we get into, and we're gonna read the verse in a second. Before we get to that, I gotta say, the Torah has a lot of messaging for judges. There are a lot of mitzvahs related to judges. Hey, good evening. A lot of mitzvahs related to judges. And one of them is about not taking a bribe, right? You have to be impartial. And there's a lot, there's a mitzvah vis-a-vis judges that says, if you're a judge, you cannot favor the wealthier party. There's also one that says you can't skew judgment in the favor of the one that has less. In other words, whether it's misguided greed or misguided compassion. When I say misguided, I mean, like, if you're skewing the law, that's not kosher. You gotta be yashar, you gotta be straight. Famously, we've discussed in other instances, in other contexts, a very curious phenomenon. In Jewish law, in order to be eligible to apply the capital punishment, there has to be a unanimous decision. There cannot be a unanimous decision of guilt. So in capital cases, typically, hey Nanette, good to see you. It's been a minute. In capital cases, so the tractate Gemara Sanhedrin, and by the way, whenever I quote Talmud, I'm always looking at Jay to make sure he's not fact checking me, because I got to be careful with you, Jay. I'm just saying, right? You and your Talmud study, right? I gotta be on guard over here. So anyway, so the Talmud says that they would appoint, that they would put up 23 judges for capital cases. The great Sanhedrin, the great High Court, was a total of 70 or 71 judges. But for capital case, that was for national decisions, like on a national level. For murder and other capital cases, 23 judges. So a lot of judges, 23. And the way it worked was like this, that if the verdict came back guilty, let's say in a case of murder, God forbid, guilty, down the line, right? They didn't have juries, the judges. Every judge said guilty. They would not apply capital punishment. Why? The thought was, if none of the judges could find any sort of justification, it must be a bum court. The court must not have been doing its due diligence and therefore kind of throw out the case. Whereas, if there's even one dissenting opinion that rules or that votes in favor of the defendant, at that point you actually do. So if it's 22-1, capital punishment is applied. Very different in the U.S., where the only way you can apply capital punishment in a guilty verdict is if it's a unanimous verdict. In Jewish law, it's the exact opposite. If there's a unanimous verdict, something is fishy. You guys with me? Which raises the conundrum, the ethical question. The way it would work is they had judges, and obviously there was a level, some were senior judges, some were more junior judges, just different ages and different levels of experience. They would go, everyone would say, no anonymous, no, I voted and it's behind the scenes and I wrote it on a piece of paper, none of that. No shenanigans, everything was transparent. And they would render, the judges would declare their decision in the court. And they would start from the least senior, i.e. the most junior judge, and then go to the most senior judge. And what do you think? Guilty or innocent? Chayev or Zakai? That's guilty or innocent. And they would go one to the next. Imagine the first 22 judges say guilty, and you believe also guilty. You're the last judge. Put yourself in that robe. You're the last judge. You believe guilty. You think this person should receive the death penalty, capital punishment for capital crime. You really believe that he or she is guilty. And 22 judges previously voted guilty. And you know that if you vote guilty, which is what you believe, the capital punishment will not be applied because it's a unanimous verdict and it's not applied. So you're thinking, aha, I'll game the system. I'll say not guilty. And by voting not guilty, the guilty verdict will be applied. Says the Torah, no shenanigans, which means you gotta vote the way you believe. You cannot try to impact or influence the outcome. You can't play the outcome. You have to be honest in judgment. And part of that honesty, getting to tonight's topic, is not taking a bribe. Ki hashoichad ya'aver divrei chachamim v'salef divrei tzadikim. It says because bribery clouds the eyes, clouds the eyes of the righteous, or the wise, and distorts the truth of the righteous. In other words, even someone who's wise and righteous, if they get a bribe, they cannot be impartial anymore, and they must recuse themselves from the case. The Talmud, the Gemara, talks about many stories of great rabbis who were on the bet din. They acted as judges as well. And maybe somebody came to town and did them a favor and helped them cross the street, right? There was a story about a guy, and it was raining, and the guy put down his coat and his jacket so that the rabbi could walk across and not get step in a puddle or whatever it is. The rabbi found out later that this was a guy that was one of the sides in a court case the next day, and he was going to be the judge. He said, I can't judge anymore because you did me a favor. And when I look at you, I'm going to start thinking of reasons that you are correct in your case. And in fact, one time the Talmud says a story about a rabbi who a favor was done to him, and he believed he could still be impartial, but Jewish law says you cannot, you have to recuse yourself from the case. But he sat in on the case, and he found himself, as he's listening to the arguments back and forth, he found himself thinking about how to make that guy's argument stronger. And he realized Bias is bias is bias. It's hard to get rid of. It's hard to get rid of a bias. So you can't give a bribe. If you're in the case, you can't accept a bribe if you're a judge. So comes along Moses in this week's Torah portion. Listen to this. I'll read the text. Take a look. Take a look at this. Text number 1. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, but you have it in front of you. Mm-hmm. We're going to get this party started. Torah portion again is Eikev, and now we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 10. Chapter 10. Faye, welcome. Who else did I not welcome? And Nanette, I don't know if you had your headphones on, but it's great to see you. Welcome, welcome. Ellen, welcome. If I did not say welcome, or you didn't hear me say welcome, apologies, but welcome to everybody. Okay, here we go. Text numeral uno. All right, here we go. For the Lord your God, says Moses to the people, for the Lord your God is the God of gods and the Lord of lords. Wow, what a description. The great, mighty, and awesome God who will show no favor, nor will he take a bribe. Basically saying you cannot buy God B-U-Y. You cannot purchase God. You cannot do your thing and say, God, I got in my pocket. I got this God. Like, it's going to be good. I'm going to work it. I'm going to work the angles. It's not how it works. God is impervious to bribes. He will show no favor, so don't even try, nor will he take a bribe. Don't even try. Now, the simple meaning is that God is the ultimate judge of justice, righteous judge, no bribery, no bias, no prejudice, no grading on a curve. It's all straightforward. However, the commentaries are stuck with a question. What's Moses saying? He's saying that God does not accept a bribe. And the question is, well, I'm going to quote Shtisel. Shkoyach. Thank you very much. God doesn't take a bribe? I mean, what were we thinking? First of all, how are you going to give God a bribe? Like, what's your plan? What, are you going to wire some cash? Like, what's the actual plan? You can't. God doesn't take bribes. Okay? What's give me the concept that you're debunking. Number 1. Number 2, bribe only works because you know that person wants stuff, right? Is lacking something, and therefore whatever, money or stuff. And like, okay, if I give you, he'll like it or she'll like it, and then it'll go in my favor. What is God missing precisely that he can be bribed with? It's like, oh yeah, God is looking for a 2-night stay in Colorado in the winter by Aspen. Like, oh, if you have a package deal, maybe he'll appreciate that. I'm only thinking of Colorado. My son Shalom just got home today, so after yeshiva, so he's in Chicago. 2 kids. Well, so we're in Chicago. One is going to Toronto next year. Anyway, so Shalom, the 15-year-old, finished yeshiva last week, Wednesday. He didn't fly home. That's so old school. Flying home after yeshiva for the 3-week break, forget about it. He went to Colorado with some friends. He has a friend whose parents are the Chabad rabbi and rebbitzin in Denver, one of the rabbis and rebbitzin in Denver. So he went to Denver. They climbed the Rockies or whatever. They went to Aspen. It was a party, and now he just got back today. So Denver on my brain. So like, what? God is looking for a ski package? Is that what's going on? Like, we're going to bribe God with a ski package? What's the plan here? Right? God doesn't accept bribes. Moses is saying, cancel the tickets. He's not going to take it anyway. It's like, what are you giving God? It's like, number 1, how are you going to give God a bribe? Number 2, what are you going to give a bribe? What kind of bribe are you giving to God? The whole thing doesn't make sense. It's not my question. It's a question that many of the commentaries ask. Let's take a look at this again inside. All right, this is from the Mizrahi. Now, who's the Mizrahi? Mizrahi, you may have heard Mizrahi in modern conversation, but that's not. There's a commentary, Rabbi Elio Mizrahi, lived in the 1400s and the 1500s. He is one of the super commentaries on Rashi. No, he doesn't have a cape, although maybe he did. But he's called the super commentary because he's a commentary on a commentary. Only in Jewish wisdom. I don't know only, but like, you have so there's the Torah, right? Then you have Rashi, the basic Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the basic, most fundamental core commentary on the Torah. But then it's like, what does Rashi mean? So now you have commentaries on the commentary of Rashi. That's where we are. That's the Mizrahi was one of them. There are many. Mizrahi is one of the commentators on Rashi. Take a look-see at what the Mizrahi writes, text 2, in his question. I don't understand, he writes, how monetary bribe would be relevant to the whole blessed be he. What kind of bribe? Moses has to preempt. Ho, ho, ho! Well, that sounds like something else, but whatever. Like, don't think that you're going to get away with a bribe. It's not going to work. And the Mizrahi says, what kind of bribe are we even talking about here? What kind of monetary bribe? Text number 3. Here we have the Sforno, again, from the same era, 1400s and 1500s. And here we have an explanation that we're not talking about a monetary bribe. God doesn't need money. God doesn't look for cash payouts or cash bribes. That's not how God rolls. Nor is there a way to get God the cash, how are you going to send it? Where is it going to go? It's not talking about a physical bribe. We're talking about a spiritual bribe. Listen to the brilliance of the interpretation. I'll first say it outside and then we'll read it inside. It's a brilliant interpretation. He says like this. Somebody is going to go ahead and think like this. I'm going to commit a sin. I'll do a sin. Or maybe they already committed a sin. Either way, did a sin. All right, now it's not good. So what am I going to do? I know. I'm going to do a mitzvah, and that's going to equal it out. You with me? I did something not good. I'll do something good. That's my bribe. Now we're even Steven. Let's take a look at the Mizrahi. Toba, what do you think of that explanation? Pretty good. Pretty good. Sforno text 3. It's not mine. It's Sforno. Sforno's, he's the man. He does not, one second. Time out. This is what the person might have wanted to do. I'm thinking I'm going to bribe God with a mitzvah to get out of, they might get out of jail card is a mitzvah. Says Moses, says Moshe Rabbeinu, God doesn't take bribes. Nice try. It ain't going to work. Let's see how the Sforno explains it. Again, text 3. Let's do it. He does not offset the punishment for a sin because of a mitzvah that the sinner did. As our sages said, a good deed performed does not extinguish the sin committed. Talmud Tractate Sota. So here we have a very fundamental teaching. And I think it is something that many of us have thought, present company excluded. What? We're not sinning. We're not doing anything wrong. But there's some people that might think the following. Well, I'll do what I want to do. And then as far as a compensation or as far as making up for it, I'll do a mitzvah and the mitzvah is going to compensate for it, right? I'm going to get out of it by doing something positive. So that's the way in which I make up for the bad thing. So I have this kind of like this negative stuff going on, but look at this shiny new thing. Look, I did a mitzvah. We're fine, right? 1 for 1 and we're good to go. So the Sforno says that's exactly what Moses is telling the people, that you should know that doesn't work. God doesn't take bribes, right? You sinned, and so you want to bribe God with a mitzvah. He's not taking it. Nice try. It's not happening. Okay, we're gonna break all this down, but let's keep on going. Let's take a look at what Maimonides writes. Maimonides writes this on Avot, not in our verse, but on a very similar statement from our sages in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, chapter 4, Mishnah 22, where it also says the same idea that God does not accept bribes. And of course, that's coming from our Torah portion, where Moses tells the people God doesn't take bribes. And there, Maimonides, the great Rambam, philosopher, physician, astronomer, and Jewish legal expert, here's how he explains that idea. It is preposterous to say that God doesn't accept bribes. How would one bribe him with? What would one bribe him with? That was our opening question, right? What kind of, we're saying God doesn't take bribes. What kind of bribe are you thinking? Rather means that God does not accept bribes of mitzvot. For instance, if a person does 1,000 mitzvot in one sin, God does not forgive the sin and deduct one mitzvah or more. Rather, he punishes the person for their sin and separately rewards them for their mitzvot. This is the meaning of he does not take a bribe. And this is important to break down. See, sometimes we think that it's like, it's points. So every mitzvah is a point. Every sin is a negative point. So if I did 1,000 mitzvahs and I did one sin, great. I'm at 999. I'm ahead. Like, it's what could possibly go wrong? I did one thing wrong, but I did all of these things. I mean, this is the extreme example of this, right? I did all of these things that are good. I did one thing wrong. I'm pretty sure we're good, right? That's definitely been washed away by all by the preponderance, by the abundance of good. So certainly the bad is automatically wiped away, and all that's left is good and reward. And Rambam says, oh, FYI, that's not the case. Two separate calculations, two separate ledgers. It's not one ledger with a point system that one is plus and one is minus. This is not a balance sheet, right? Right, income and expenses, and it all balances together, pluses and minuses. That's not how this works. Two separate cheshbonos, as they say, two separate ledgers. You have the positive ledger and the negative ledger. And guess what? Each one stays in its place. The positive ledger, you get rewarded for. The negative, yeah, the opposite. Does one negate or cancel out the other? No. By the way, it works both ways. It works both ways. The mitzvah doesn't take away the sin. The sin doesn't take away the mitzvah. Each one, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but each one remains in its own ledger. So there's reward and there's punishment, and it's not a point system. This is not like, it's not a budget. It's not like does this make sense? Yeah, you see what he's saying? Because, and I think it's important because many of us would otherwise, or maybe have thought, oh, yeah, totally, that's how it works. If I'm doing all these good things and I have a few bad things, whatever, we're good, right? Like, we're good. It's like, let's use a less extreme number. I did 100 good things today and I did 10 things that were not so nice. Okay, I'm plus 90, right? Where's my parade? I'm going to that line lately. Throw me a ticker tape. Like, let's go. Break it out. Can I choose the music and the float? Like, let's do this. Like, let's celebrate. I'm plus 90. That's very good. And Rambam says that ain't how it works. It's not how it works. It doesn't work like that. The pluses are the pluses. Don't worry, that will be rewarded. But the negatives are the negatives, and the negatives, there are consequences for that, and that remains on its own. Now, by the way, it's not like the most inspiring message, like, oh, sins will remain, and therefore, and that's what's going to come back. I mean, it's like, oh, right. I thought we were good, and now we're learning, well, maybe there's something more to it. So on this, we can ask a few questions because there's a few things to go a little bit deeper in. Because, oh, look at this. Oh, beautiful. One more text. Take a look at this. Take a look at text number 5. Okay. The Avodas Yisrael. Text 5. The verse tells us not to accept bribes. Oh, he's talking about a verse that tells judges not to accept bribes. But as you'll see from the inside, it applies to our verse also about God not accepting bribes. It all works together. The verse tells us not to accept bribes. A person can sometimes convince themselves after they have sinned that when they do a mitzvah or study Torah, that good deeds that good deed atones for their sin. Subsequently, this rationale will lead them to sin again and restart the process. I feel like I should explain that. Person says, okay, I did something wrong, but I made up for it. I did something good. So now we're even. And I'll do something wrong. Then I'll do something good. Then something wrong, then something good. But all right, but I keep on. It's like I'm etch-a-sketching. I'm sketching and or whatever it is, and I'm erasing. And we were cycling through that. That's what a person might think. Therefore, the Torah warns us against this way of thinking. For it is akin to bribery. It's almost like self-bribery, which blinds the eyes of the wise, which in that case would be ourselves. It is not the case that a good deed atones for a sin. Rather, the punishment for sins and reward for good deeds are calculated independently. Two separate measures, two separate calculuses or calculi, two separate ledgers, two separate cheshbonos, two separate calculations. Everything is separate. The good is the good, the bad is the bad, and that's it. It doesn't mix. Otherwise, we would be constantly mixing, and in Yiddish, The Yiddish word for mixing is mishing. You hear the word mishing and mishing together. It's mixing. It's one chalent. You know what a chalent is? So what's in a chalent? Whatever you got, throw it in the chalent. That's how you define a chalent. A chalent is, you got somebody's like, what goes in a chalent? Like, well, what do you have? Potatoes. In. I have beans. What kind? Kidney beans. Throw them in. What else you have? Barley. Yeah, throw it in. I got kishka. I'm not sure what that is. Throw it in. What's going to go wrong? Throw it in, right? I got a can of Coke in my fridge. Throw it in. What do you mean? Do people do Coke kishka? I have a barbecue sauce and ketchup and mustard. Throw it in. I have a few eggs left in the thing. Put it in foil. Throw it in. This is a chalent. I'm not wrong here, Toba, right? This is a chalent. So we typically think it's all a chalent. It's all going to get mixed together. I did something wrong. I've compensated for it. I then davened. I studied Torah. I did a mitzvah. It's a wash. He says, not so fast. It's not such a wash. Two separate calculations. The good is the good. The bad is the bad. And that's great. And that's what it means. God doesn't accept bribes. You can't bribe God. You can't bribe God for a sin with a mitzvah. Great. I have two questions. Question number one, why not? Hey, you said you can't. I'm going to ask, why not? I don't know. No, there's two separate calculations. And I know I've been drilling this for the last 10 minutes, but who says? Or why not? Why not? Why not just say that that if somebody does something not so good, they can compensate by something good? Why does it have to be that they're two separate systems? Maybe it should be one system. That's the first question. Second question is, if we're saying that you can't fix a sin with a mitzvah, so then what's the recourse? So until now, I thought I did something wrong. At least I can do something good and it'll fix it. And now we're saying, no, the good just adds more to the good pile. The bad is still there. So what? Is there no hope? I can't fix it? What's going on here? Okay, so these are the two questions. Number one, why doesn't it mix together? And number two, so how do we fix the bad if that is indeed the case? So I think to really understand this, we're going to go much deeper into the notion of what a mitzvah is and what a sin is and what happens when we do one and the other. We got to go deeper. And ultimately, we're going to explore this from the perspective of Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy, which is really, look, at the end of the day, we're talking about the soul of Torah, right? The soul of Torah. There's the body of Torah. Every mitzvah, it's like do this, don't do that, right? It's the body of Torah. It's the mechanics. But then the reason, the depth, the spirituality, the meaning, the personal message, that's the soul of Torah. So let's get to the soul. So here we go. We're gonna start getting into this by looking at text number 6. Okay, text number 6. Here we go. The distinction between mitzvot and sins is not just in the effect they have on the person, but they are essentially two different things. A mitzvah is the fulfillment of God's will. A sin is a transgression of God's will. Consequently, every mitzvah is in its own category, and vice versa, every sin is in its own category. And you might be thinking, what do we add with text 6? Like, what is this adding? A mitzvah is the fulfillment of God's will, and a sin is a transgression. Isn't that literally the definition? Like, what's the aha moment here? I want to explain. I think the way to explain this is by using the example of a relationship. Imagine you're in a relationship and you do something that hurts the other person, violates their trust, disrespects, whatever it is, right? Do something hurtful to the other person, say something hurtful, whatever, to the other person. And imagine if your grand thought of compensation would be to come home with, I'm trying to think, with a gift. It's like, oh, I know I disrespected you. I know that I neglected you. I know that I wasn't considerate, but look at this shiny thing that I got you. Isn't it all better? Now, if you've ever been on the side of the one that's done the thing, it may have made a lot of sense. Oh yeah, I'll just get something and that'll all be good. But if you've ever been on the other side, well, then you know that that's not exactly how it works. Because, no matter how many shiny things you give me, we've got some unfinished business. Like what happened with that situation? Like what happened in that moment when something wrong happened? Like, were you not thinking of me? What does that mean? Like, what's going on? What does that mean for the relationship? Let's have a conversation about that piece of it, or let's figure that out. Let's reconcile that. I don't know that flowers or chocolate or whatever is going to actually compensate for what was done. Does that make sense? Is that fair? There's somebody, and I mean, we can go to an extreme example, but I don't want to speak in a as they say in Yiddish, in a grubba way, in a coarse way. Imagine somebody does something really unfaithful or disrespectful. Are you going to make it up by some sort of monetary bribe, as it were? I don't mean actual monetary bribe, but you're going to make it up with something shiny? It's not going to work. That's not going to help. So what's going on here? Every mitzvah, we just read in text 6, every mitzvah is the fulfillment of God's will, and every sin is the transgression of God's will. And what that means is that every mitzvah affirms that I respect my relationship with my Creator, and every sin is a declaration I don't respect the relationship with my Creator that much or all the way. And so how are you going to make up, compensate? How are you going to compensate for an act or a declaration of disrespect or lack of attentiveness by dangling something else and saying, but look at this. But don't you remember when I did pay attention? Or I'm paying attention to this other thing? Well, what about that thing? You still haven't fixed that problem. And so there's only one way to fix the problem. And I know it sounds crazy, but you know what it is? Richard, you know what it is. How do you fix the problem? By fixing the problem. You just got to get into it. You got to dig into that thing. You got to figure out how that thing is now going to change, how that area of the relationship, how that part of your connection with the other, how it's going to from here on out, it's not going to be the same. It means owning up to it and saying, this is where I was up to, and this is where I am, and this is the way it's going to be from now on. It's not about dangling another mitzvah. Oh, look, flowers, chocolate, a new car. That's not what's going to work. It's going to be actually doing the work in the area that was neglected. You know what we call that? You know what that's called in Hebrew?
Teshuvah.
Teshuvah. Teshuvah means I fix the problem. In other words, the antidote to sin is not another mitzvah.
But isn't Teshuvah really only valid when you come to that same situation and correct it at that point in time, rather than just planning on it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct. In other words, Teshuvah means that I'm fixing the problem. I'm not throwing another mitzvah. If my area, I'm not like, if in a relationship, a person struggles in a certain area in the relationship with their significant other and is not so attentive in a certain area, but says, but look at all the attentiveness that I give in a different area. That's great. And that will stand on its own. And that's important. And that's valid. And no one's taking that away. But it doesn't fix the problem. You know what fixes the problem? Fixing the problem. And that's what we call teshuvah. Teshuvah means I fix the problem. How do you know when the problem's fixed? When the same scenario, what you're mentioning, what Rambam says, when the same scenario presents itself, but this time you make the better choice. So I'll give you an example. Let's say, I don't know, I'm going to give such a stereotype. That's what in my head is so stereotypical. It's like so silly. All right, a guy who goes, instead of coming home from work, he goes out with the guys and has some beers and doesn't call his wife and is not attentive. And now she's upset. And he says, but look, I got you flowers. I like flowers, but I'd like you to be home also. Teshuvah means that the next day you come home. Don't smoke and mirror this with flowers, right? Don't dangle something else, right? Go to some zach, go to the core, fix the problem, address the problem, own up to the problem, and say, look, I was not attentive. I didn't show up for you. I wasn't there. I wasn't responsive. Whatever it is, forget that scenario. I gave us like a just whatever. That's just a random scenario, right? But like whatever the issue is, own it, right? Teshuvah is you own it. You don't deflect. I did wrong. I know the area. I'm going to fix it here on out. And then, of course, when you have the opportunity, when the scenario replays itself, but you behave differently, then you know that it's fixed or that it's different than it was before, as you mentioned, Richard. And so what's the point? The point is that is how we fix the problem. It's not by doing another mitzvah. Not that I'm saying not to do another mitzvah. That's do every mitzvah you can. But to fix the sin, to fix the liability, you got to fix the liability. Imagine someone's driving home. I don't know. I mean, just this parable just came to me. I don't know if it's gonna hold. They say in Yiddish, if it's eis gehalten, it means like if it holds water. So imagine this: you're driving home from work in your car, and you hit a nail, and your tire goes flat, and you say to yourself, "You know what? I'm gonna fix this. You know how? Not by fixing the flat tire, right? I'm gonna pump up the other tire, like really big. I'm gonna change out." I don't know tires, but I'm going to change out the standard tire or wheel for a super duper deluxe tire and wheel. The other ones that are already working. Great. You still can't drive home. You still got a flat tire. You got to address the problem. If you don't address the problem, you didn't address the problem. I know it sounds simple, but I think it's very important because sometimes we think that I did something wrong, but I can compensate by doing something else that's right. Do the good thing, but don't forget, you got to go back to the problem to fix the problem. And this will show. If you read my email earlier today, I wrote that you can't bribe. Torah says you can't bribe God. What does that mean? I said, but there is one way to bribe God. Take a look at this. This will shock you. Sound like a BuzzFeed headline writer. Text number 7. Take a look. Okay, no merit, Sforno. No merit can save one from punishment for sins. The only way, in other words, no mitzvah, no other outside external merit can save the punishment for sin. The only way the slate can be wiped clean is through genuine repentance. In other words, through teshuvah shlema. The only way to do it is by fixing the problem. You can't fix the problem by waving something else that's shiny. Now take a look at text 8. Midrash. Shocking. The Holy One, blessed be he, says to the Jewish nation, my children, as long as the gates of repentance are open, repent, for I accept bribes in this world. Look at that. God says, I do accept the bribe. And what's the bribe? Bribe, teshuvah, which means in our parasha, when he says, I don't accept the bribe, what he means is what Moshe means about God not accepting bribes is very narrowly a mitzvah for a sin. But teshuvah for the sin, God does accept that bribe. And God says, bribe me, baby, bring it on. Do that teshuvah because, a bribe is not really a bribe. It's how you fix the problem. God says, I accept bribes. Do teshuvah. Teshuvah means it's not something, the woo-woo. It's very simple. I'm not trying to minimize it, but it's very fundamental. Teshuvah means I did something wrong. I own up to it. I commit to changing my behavior, and I actually change my behavior. And that's how you fix the problem. That's it. Can you imagine? You fix the problem by fixing the problem and not by waving something else that's shiny, toward God. God says, I don't. Moses says about God, he doesn't take bribes. He's not going to take yes, he'll reward your other mitzvah, but that's not going to fix this. And then the Midrash says, but you know what God does take? That's the bribe that God does take. And that's the ultimate fix. That is what actually fixes the thing.
Rabbi,
take a look. Yes.
So when you wipe the slate clean, by doing teshuvah, that is forgiveness and wiping the slate clean in God's eyes. Is the person who you sinned against supposed to accept that and also forgive?
Oh, who said you sinned against another person?
Well, I never did. I'm just
right? Who does that? That would be crazy. That would be reckless.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, halakha says that, if somebody genuinely comes with regret and remorse, you should forgive them. I mean, like, if we want God to forgive us, we should extend the same favor to others, right? If we want to be forgiven, we should be forgiving. On the side of the one who committed the grievance, halacha mandates that you go back to the person 3 times, 3 different ways to try to appease them and demonstrate that you are changed and you are sincerely asking for forgiveness. But that being said, I let's just focusing back on this idea. The idea here is that a sin is a sin, a mitzvah is a mitzvah. The two are separate realities. How do we? Because one is a positive, one's a negative. The negative doesn't go away because of the positive. The hurt doesn't go away because of the chocolate. I like chocolate, but I'm still hurt. That's the bottom line, right? The hurt goes away when you fix the hurt. Right. When I see that you're not going to do that again, and I realize that you're sincere and we have a better understanding. And the truth is, and here's the next piece of this, it could be the relationship is stronger because of that. Could be the relationship grows and becomes stronger than it ever was had the negative thing never happened. And that's really the ideal. The ideal really is that we become stronger through the sin, through the teshuvah of the sin than before. This is the highest level of teshuvah. So let's read some text about this.
Can I ask one more question? Just really quick. Was Abraham bribing God over Sodom and Gomorrah? Was that a bribe?
No. Okay. Negotiating. Okay. God, if there's 10 righteous people, will you not punish them? God says, yeah. Yeah, that's straight up a negotiation. Okay. Here we go. Text number 9. Midrash Shmuel. Teshuvah is one thing, and mitzvahs are another thing. Don't confuse them. Teshuvah operates on the principle of atonement. When a person regrets their sin and repents, the repentance cleanses the spiritual stain of the sin. That's really important, right? You regret the sin and repent. Regret means you own it. You're not deflecting. Look, I glossed over it, but like the first step is regret, and the key to regret is I did it. How many times do we say I did it, but you pushed me into it, or I wasn't, I was in a difficult situation. You know what that means? You're not owning it. You're deflecting it. Then teshuvah can't begin unless you've owned it. Teshuvah doesn't begin unless you say, I did something wrong. If you didn't do anything wrong, then where's the teshuvah? Then what are you fixing if you didn't do anything wrong? So step 1 is owning it. Okay. So that's what that is. But someone who has even hundreds of thousands of mitzvot, that's a lot of mitzvot, and just a few sins abandoned in a corner, but they never repented for those sins, the sins will stay there forever. How could they be removed if no one removes them? And that last line is so simple and yet so fundamental to the conversation. If you don't take them away, they're not taken away. If you didn't do teshuvah, they're still there. Yes, you add it to the pile of mitzvahs. That's a separate pile that doesn't magically wipe away the negativity. Let's take a look at text number 10. No. We're going to skip text 10. That's going to pull us off track. Let's do text 11, further along the notion of teshuvah and really the power of what's called teshuvah me'ava, teshuvah from love. Take a look at this. The concept of teshuvah, which is repentance, return, etc. What we're done when you're fixing the problem, is that one is moved to the core of their soul because of their sins. Now that line, moved to the core of their soul because of their sins, you know what that means? That means, again, going back to the human relationship for a second, imagine if a person, does something that hurts their beloved one, whether it's a spouse or a parent or a child. You did something, you said something, and you realize later on that like, oof, yeah, I wasn't intending necessarily, but I see that really hurt them. And then it's a real wake-up call. It's like, wow, I'm not as attentive as I need to be. I really, and you're broken because they're broken, and it hits you deeply. It cuts to your core, and you say, you know what? I'm not only am I never going to do that again, but I realize now, because of the pain that they have and that I have because of causing them pain, I have pain. All of that is a lesson for me of how important they are in my life. And I appreciate them now even more than ever before because of what just happened. You know what that means? That means that now the relationship is stronger precisely because of the sin. And that is a teshuvah that almost, not fully, but almost reclaims the past. You know, look, time, we would all say, stretches forward. And which DeLorean do we have to go backwards and switch things, right? Michael J. Fox's picture suddenly disappears because his mom falls in love, right? Wasn't that the story? He fell in love with his own mother. That was like a crazy situation, right? And then his picture fades, which is, all of that is, that's super, I don't know what the right word is, twisty in the brain of like how things play out. But the point is, we can't go back in time. And so one might posit, look, the past is the past, the mistake is the mistake, the grievance is the grievance, the hurt is the hurt. At least I can make sure that from now on, I don't hurt them anymore. But Judaism takes it a step further and says you can even go backwards in time. Because if that mistake propels you to a deeper connection now into the future, turns out that you're redefining what that meant. That wasn't a moment of separation. That was a moment that fueled a greater connection. You with me? Now, again, in the moment, a negative thing was done, but what it means, its impact or its import, is actually something positive as opposed to something negative, and that is a big deal. So if you take a look at the rest of text 11, he says, when they realize how distant they are from God, and it affects them to the depth of their soul, they are moved to the core out of a sense of deep bitterness. When it affects them to the depths of their heart, the essence of their soul is moved out of a sense of deep bitterness. I feel like I said that. As a result, they feel a great and all-consuming yearning to godliness from the very depths of their soul. A lot of depths over there. The point is that it's the mistake that fuels a deeper passion to reconnect. It's the way it is. And we continue the theme with text 12. A sinner must repent to such an extent that their sins transform into merits. Look at that. Sins transforming into merits. That's phenomenal. Which is achieved through repentance out of love. Teshuvah me'av. This means repentance from the depths of the heart with great love and passion, desire to cleave to God. Because the sinner had been in a spiritually barren wilderness in the shadow of the forces of evil and infinitely removed from the light of the divine countenance, their soul now thirsts for God even more than the souls of the righteous. This is referenced by the statement of verse 8, in the place where penitents stand, not even the perfectly righteous can stand. Just simply stated, when you're in a place of disconnect. What's the phrase in English? Distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? That's the phrase. So when you come to terms face to face with the fact that you're distant from where you ought to be, that actually. Absence. Thank you. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. So when the further you are away, paradoxically or whatever, I don't know if it's paradoxically, but inversely, the drive to get close is fueled even stronger. And that's what he's saying here. It is concerning the repentance out of such great love that the sage has said in the Talmud, the penitent sins transform into merit, since the remorse for these sins ultimately brought the sinner to this feeling of great love. In other words, how does sins, right? Sins over, I know I can't highlight it. Well, how does sins transform into merits? Because it was not in and of itself, but when you do teshuvah, then the sins actually fuel a greater love for God and greater connection with God and Torah and Mitzvot, and thus the sins became merits or fueled merits. Okay, so we talked about a lot of stuff. We're not done yet. We talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about how mitzvahs and the opposite sins, two separate spaces. There's the good that we do, which is all about affirming the relationship. There's the negative stuff we do, which is all about almost disavowing the relationship, sort of. And we said that one doesn't really compensate for the other. The only compensation for the sin is fixing the sin. Teshuvah, and the ultimate is to get to a place of teshuvah where that fuels an even greater love, which makes the sin into a merit, basically into a mitzvah, and that's the ultimate holy grail. Great. But bottom line is, we said that a mitzvah cannot take away the impact of the sin. You got to fix the sin for itself. The opposite is also true. Converse sounds like a shoe. The opposite is also true. What is the opposite? A sin can't take away from a mitzvah. I'll say it again. Just like a mitzvah can't fix a sin. You got to fix a sin. So too, a sin can't take away from a mitzvah. Sometimes a person will say, you want me to do a mitzvah? Do you know what I'm doing the rest of my time? It's like, hey, you want to put on tefillin? Rabbi, me put on tefillin? Are you kidding me? I'm not a good Jew. Why should I put on tefillin? Whoa, 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 whoa. Why are you mixing things? Who's mixing? Just like a mitzvah can't take away from a sin. You know what? A sin can't take away from the mitzvah. It doesn't matter what else you're doing. Every mitzvah is an affirmation of connection. Every mitzvah stands eternally. Every mitzvah is a declaration, God, you matter to me. It's like, how about this Friday night? Whether you do or don't, usually this Friday night, you're going to light Shabbat candles before sundown. But what's the point if I'm not going to observe the whole Shabbat? 1 second. Slow it down. Stop mixing things. Who's mixing? Keep things separate. Don't try to pull away the mitzvah because of some other thing that's happening or that you're doing. It's a mitzvah. Great. It stands alone as a merit and a connection and an affirmation and something eternal, an eternal bond. Do the mitzvah. Enjoy the mitzvah. Experience the mitzvah. What happened before, what will happen later is of no interest. Take a look at a beautiful text. Take a look at text. I want to say it's text 12. Nope. This is going to be text number 13. No. Okay. So three points. I want to make 3 points. So 3 points, and you're probably wondering 3 points about what? Okay. 3 points about why it's valuable to do a mitzvah, even if before and after might come other things than a mitzvah. Doesn't matter. Do the mitzvah. Point number 1, it's a connection point. It's an eternal connection. It's a moment in time that will remain forever. It's a time to touch infinity, to touch God. It's a time to declare your connection. Yes, later or maybe earlier, something else was at play. It doesn't matter. This moment stands forever. There's another idea. And that is, maybe it's not about you. Every mitzvah objectively makes the world a brighter place. And there will come a time when the scales will tip to the side of light and goodness. And it could be that your mitzvah that you do will tip the scales for good. I've got all these other liabilities that I haven't fixed. And who am I to do a mitzvah? Who are you not to do a mitzvah? Bro, the world is hanging the balance, right? You've heard whoever's taken class with me for a while, you know this. I just took my kids to these things recently. These arcades, these arcade places, right? It's got like a little casino for kids, kid casinos, right? Shiny lights, man, it's like very jarring for the senses. But like, there's this thing where you like drop a coin in, and there's like this platform that's moving back and forth, and it's got coins. You drop one coin in, but if it hits the right spot, all the coins that are leaning over the edge, they fall over the edge, and then you get a bunch of tickets. You get like 100 tickets, and you can get an eraser. It's like $50 later. It's like, oh, the kid got an eraser. Oh, what a day. Fine, whatever. It's great. Everyone has fun. And good times are had by all. The point is, one little coin, both literally and metaphorically, can tip the scales for good, eternally. Take a look at the text 13, which is the Rebbe quoting the Rambam it's just a really beautiful text. Okay, here we go. Check this out. We have 2 more texts. Text 13. There are those who mock the practice of encouraging Jews to perform a mitzvah, saying, what's the point of putting on tefillin just one time? By the way, the Rebbe, as we know, famously started the tefillin campaign right before the 6-Day War. Right? The Rebbe said, hey, go out, ask people if they're Jewish, ask them if they like to put on tefillin, and go guerrilla Judaism. Just go out to the streets and just do it. Get a mitzvah tank, get a whatever, like just get an RV, deck it out, blare some music, have some food in there, have some books, wrap tefillin, give out Shabbat candles, that's it. But then there were those who said, what's the point? Here we go. This claim is at odds with the ruling of Rambam Maimonides. A person should always look at themselves as equally balanced between merit and sin, and the world as equally balanced between merit and sin. If one performs one sin, they tip their balance and that of the entire world to the side of guilt. and bring destruction upon themselves, God forbid. On the other hand, if one performs one mitzvah, they tip their balance and that of the entire world to the side of merit and bring deliverance and salvation to themselves and others, bringing Mashiach. You can bring global redemption, a better world, a perfect world, a perfected world. You can make that happen with one mitzvah. So what are you going to say? Nope, that person does not deserve to do a mitzvah because they're not holding on that level. That's not the life that they're living, and then let them clean up everything else that they're doing, and then they should wrap tefillin. And the Rebbe said, what? First of all, not in that text. First of all, why would you say that someone shouldn't have a moment of connection just because of other moments of disconnection? Who cares? Two separate ledgers. Number one. Number two, one mitzvah can change the world for good. Why would you withhold that? And number three, third point, one mitzvah is never just one mitzvah. And this is going to be, I'm like getting like the chills almost. This is going to be one of those texts that I hope will stay with you forever. This text, it's so beautiful. It's just literally beautiful. Take a look at this. Text 14. One mitzvah is never just one mitzvah. There's two texts. Okay, fine. Text 14 is short though. Okay, the emperor's new tie. Keep that in mind. A mitzvah leads to another mitzvah. Okay, says Rabbi Elisha Greenbaum, but he's paraphrasing. So he writes for Chabad Org, but he's paraphrasing the Rebbe's insight. Take a look. The question was once posed to the Lubavitcher Rebbe by a not yet religious individual. The Rebbe had compared adding extra mitzvot into one's daily routine to wearing a tie, which adds beauty and splendor to one's whole ensemble. So Rebbe said, basically, add another mitzvah. It's like now you're putting on a tie on top of everything. In response, the man asked what seems to be an ingenious question. He pointed out that the Rebbe's analogy would hold true only for someone already wearing clothes. However, were a naked person to don a tie rather than looking better, he'd look completely ridiculous. In other words, if I'm not doing any mitzvahs, why should I do one? That's like wearing a tie. Who does that? That's insane. Like, I'm not wearing clothes, but I've got my tie on. You please leave the restaurant, sir. Like that's not acceptable attire. But look at the Rebbe's twist. It's like only the Rebbe could come. It's brilliant. Okay, take a look. I love it. Love it. The obvious import of the query is to question the value of any one mitzvah when performed by an otherwise unobservant person. When someone does nothing else Jewish and has no intention to change, what's the point of adorning oneself with a frilly appendage? It seems not only hypocritical, but foolish too. What, you're going to wear a tie with no clothes? The Rebbe agreed that a naked man wearing a tie might indeed look silly, but contended that the very act of putting on a tie would probably wake him up to the fact that he's naked in the first place. Sometimes the incongruity of being simultaneously undressed but over-accessorized, this is brilliant, can lead you to rush off to cover yourself up. The Rebbe's analogy speaks for itself. Do a mitzvah, and you'll find yourself realizing how much you want to do another one. Stepping into the path of mitzvahs may seem daunting, especially when surrounded by negativity. But like the famous saying about a journey of 1,000 miles, a spiritual journey begins with a single mitzvah. Take that first step and see where it leads you. That one act, that one moment of connection holds the potential to create a ripple effect, not just in your life, but in the entire world. Embrace the power of a single mitzvah, and maybe the spark that ignites a fire within you. You know what? I feel like the ending was beautiful, but it lost a little bit of steam for me. The key is sometimes the incongruity of being simultaneously underdressed but over-accessorized can lead you to rush off to cover yourself up. It's like, wait, I just did a mitzvah. Maybe I should go like in Manhattan, right? Like, oh, I just wrapped tefillin on my way to lunch. Maybe I'll duck into the kosher restaurant today. One mitzvah leads to another mitzvah, which leads to another mitzvah. That's the way it works. Now, if it doesn't, still a mitzvah. If it doesn't, still could change the world for the better. But you know what? One is never one. I'll end with a story. Three people go to heaven. The Italian, to figure out like which nationalities I'm going to come up with. The Italian the Frenchman and the Jew. And they're each judged, and they have a mixture of good and not so good. And they say to each of them the same basic thing. They say, look, you're going to get rewarded, but you need to have a little bit of, a little bit. You're not going to send you down to, the fiery gates, but a little bit, something. You can enjoy heaven. You can enjoy heaven. But he tells the Frenchman, but at 5 p.m. every afternoon, 5 p.m., they're going to bring out a hot bowl of, what's a French soup? Is there a French onion? That's not a French soup, is it? It's just called that. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's just go with it. They'll bring out a 5 p.m. Boiling hot big pot of French onion soup, and they're going to dip you in. It's a little bit of punishment mixed into the otherwise heavenly experience. Do you want it? And he says, no, I can't take it. Give me something else. You say, they figure out something else. They go to the fellow from Italy, the Italian, same thing. You're going to get rewarded, but you have a beautiful afterlife, heaven, paradise. But every day, 5 p.m., they're going to bring out, what's an Italian dish? Help me out here. Or a soup. A minestrone. Is that Italian? I don't know. Whatever it is, a minestrone soup. It's going to be hot, 5 p.m. They're going to dip you in. It's going to burn. Do you want it? He says, no, I can't take it. Figure out something else. Okay, they come to the show. You get a reward. You get heaven. You get a great afterlife. But 5 p.m., every 5 p.m., every day, hot, boiling pot of chicken matzo ball soup, dipped in, it's going to hurt. And he says, I'll take it. The Frenchman, the Italian, look at him and say, we know you. You've got a weaker constitution than we do. Right? Like you can't handle pain. What are you doing? He says, look, I know kosher food. 5 p.m. is never 5 p.m. and the soup is never hot. And my friends, just like the soup is never hot, 5 p.m. is never 5 p.m., one mitzvah is never just one mitzvah. One mitzvah leads to another mitzvah, which leads to another mitzvah, mitzvah gereres mitzvah. And when you're wearing a tie with nothing else on, you're like, you know what? Maybe I should throw in a suit also. And then you find yourself wearing a suit. And before you know it, you even have the shoes with the little things in the bottom that make noise when you walk, as if you're tap dancing, because you got your whole ensemble together. And so never hold yourself back from accessorizing, because it's the accessories that really can stir the inside. From the outside in, a lot of change can happen. May we all be inspired to do a mitzvah, to never let any deficits hold us back from adding to our positive armory, as it were, the positive side. Separate ledgers, do a mitzvah, do another mitzvah, learn some Torah, reach out to someone else, Avas Yisrael, be there for a friend or even a stranger. Make a difference, because making a difference makes a difference. And when, like we started off, when there's stuff to fix the stuff, and then do more good. Thank you for joining me tonight for Torah studies. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope the soup in this world is always hot, and that you don't have to send it back with the waiter. That's always not fun. Pleasure. Thank you, Jay. Any questions, comments? What do you guys have? I feel like I did a lot of talking tonight. Not gonna lie. That was
Hi, Ari.
Hey, Nanette, how are you?
Hi. I'm
Good
okay.
I saw your
I'm okay.
text. Oh, here we go. French onion minestrone. There we go. Oh, both French and Italian Jews. Yeah. There we go. There we go. Questions, comments?
I sent you a joke, but you didn't get it. I'll have to resend it. I sent you a good joke.
I'm always on the prowl for good jokes.
You need better ones, I hate to tell you.
What is it? The bourbon?
You left out the bourbon in the cholent.
Oh, by the way, literally. Oh, I told a great bourbon joke today. I taught a class earlier today at the JCC.
All right, let's hear it.
All right, you ready? So a guy walks into the bar. I've told this before, but it's always good. I haven't told it in a while. Guy walks into a bar, he orders a shot of bourbon. Bartender pours him a shot of bourbon, sips it down, finishes it, takes the glass, fires it at the head of the bartender. He ducks, last minute, smashes behind him. It breaks. He says, what's going on? The guy says, I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed. I don't know what to say or do. I have anger issues ever since whatever it is, my trauma. and I'm so sorry. I'm ashamed. I won't do it again. And the bartender says, okay, don't do this again. You got to leave. And that's it. Okay. Comes back a week later, orders another shot of bourbon. It does it. He drinks it, throws it. The guy ducks, smashes. What's going on? I'm so sorry. I'm so ashamed. That happens 3 times. Finally, the bartender says, look, you're no longer welcome to this establishment. You will not be served, right? You're not going to have anything over here. You cannot have, we're not going to give you alcohol. This is great. Until you go 12 months in therapy, come back with a note from your therapist. And then if you have a note from your therapist, then we will pour you a drink. Comes back in 12 months with a note from the therapist that so-and-so has gone to therapy. He says, great. He pours him a drink. The guy drinks it, grabs the glass, throws it at the head of the bartender and says, what's going on? I thought you were in therapy. He says, I was. And now I'm no longer ashamed. Now I'm no longer ashamed. Okay. All right. That's neither here nor there. That's my bourbon joke. That was my bourbon joke from earlier today. So the moral of the story, let's do good and let's not get too caught up in the other stuff. And the other stuff we got to fix, but keep it separate. Never let, I cannot tell you anecdotally how many times I've encouraged someone to, hey, let's come to shul or come over for this or that. Let's do a mitzvah. Like, Rabbi, I'm not a good Jew. How many times have I heard that? Not a good Jew. What does that have to do with doing a mitzvah? Who's looking at some sort of ledger here? I mean, not ledger. It's some sort of like there's a scorecard, right? Do a mitzvah opportunity. So never let and just know this. I'm not trying to like belabor the point, but I mean I kind of am. But like one thing is that's for sure coming from the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. The evil inclination is pulling out every methodology to try to keep a person away from the next good thing. And part of that is you. Come on, that's not you. Oh, you're going to be the one that goes to a class. You're going to be the one that encourages someone else to study Torah, to come over and go to a kosher restaurant for lunch. Like that's you. It's suddenly you're going to be that guy or a woman. Like that's going to be your thing. Come on, you know who you are. That inner voice, not coming from a holy place. It's not coming from a humble place. It's not coming from a holy place. It's coming from a negative place. So don't listen to that voice. Listen to this voice. Listen to the voice of Torah. All right. Don't worry about my voice, but listen to the voice of Torah and let's, as they say,
Rabbi,
yes.
This class hit the spot tonight. Thanks. Very good.
I was just swallowing water. Thank you very much. By the way, I will say that I know everyone's, living their lives and doing the things, but I always find that the parsha and even what we pick with the Torah studies somehow always is, for some people more than others, but it's always a resonance there. So hopefully thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And I'm glad it was resonant, and I hope for everybody it resonated in its own way. And so, all right, let's do good. And don't stop yourself from doing good. That's the bottom line. All right. Is that it? Oh, quick scheduling note. And I'm literally saying this, and I don't know that I'm going to remember everything because there's a ton of stuff going on right now. By the way, I don't know if everyone knows. We're running a yeshiva. I don't send out emails about some of this stuff because it's like more of a smaller group. The Torah Center is running a yeshiva for 14 to 19-year-olds, like yeshiva students, like my sons and others and other boys that are home from yeshiva. Typically, they have 3 weeks. They don't have 2 months in the summer. They have 3 weeks off. And part of it is that in the 3 weeks, if they get out of like the rhythm of yeshiva, it's like, you can end up going to sleep late and then waking up late. And then no one feels good about that, including the young men themselves. And so we have a yeshiva that goes from the morning until early afternoon every day. And so that's a beautiful thing. By the way, if anybody wants to just get some nachas and kvel and have some coffee and schmooze, I'm here in the mornings at the synagogue from 8:30 to 1:15. That's the hours of the yeshiva. We have classes consistently going on. We have a lot of new classes. So tomorrow, for example, there's Journey of the Soul, day and night classes. We have Thursday is actually quiet. Sunday, of course, there's Kabbalah Cafe. Monday, there is Monday night is the new election course. We're having our second lesson this Monday. Tuesday is Torah studies, and Wednesday, we have Journey of the Soul again, and it goes on. So join. If you haven't joined, something started, join anyway. Oh, perfect. Don't let the missed class get in the way of joining another class. You can always join wherever you are, whatever you want. Just let me know. We'll get you in. We'll study Torah together and do a mitzvah, all that good stuff. Okay. Laila Tov. I hate saying
Thank you,
goodbye.
Rabbi. Laila
I'm not
Tov.
going to say goodbye. I'll just say it till next time. We'll see you guys soon. Laila Tov.